Understanding blood pressure, which number poses the real risk. Every time you check your blood pressure, two numbers appear on that screen. You've probably glanced at them dozens, maybe hundreds of times. But here's something unsettling. One of those numbers is quietly causing damage that the other barely hints at. And most people have been watching the wrong one for years. What makes this worse? Many receive reassurance that everything looks fine. They walk away from checkups believing they're protected. Meanwhile, inside their arteries, a slow-motion crisis builds momentum. No symptoms, no warnings, no second chances once it strikes. Today, I'm going to show you exactly which number actually predicts your risk, why this confusion persists even in medical settings, and how thousands of people are blindsided by events they never saw coming, despite monitoring their blood pressure regularly. This isn't about fear. It's about seeing clearly what's been hidden in plain sight. Welcome back to Wellness Secrets, where we cut through health confusion and deliver truth you can actually use. Blood pressure seems simple on the surface. Two numbers. Higher means worse. Lower means better. Case closed, right? Not even close. The relationship between those two values reveals far more than most people realize. It tells a story about aging, arterial health, and cardiovascular destiny that unfolds over decades. By the end of this video, you'll understand something that changes everything. Which of those two numbers carries the real weight, and why focusing on the other one has left millions dangerously exposed. Part 2 will show you exactly what to do about it. But first, you need to understand what you're actually dealing with. Before we go further, I want you to think about something. When your blood pressure reading appears, those two numbers stacked on top of each other, which one do you instinctively focus on? The top number or the bottom? Most people have a habit, something they've done for years without questioning why. Some were told the bottom number represents resting pressure and assumed that's the important one. Others watch the top number climb and hear reassuring words. That's normal for your age. Keep your answer in mind, because by the end of this video, you may realize that habit needs to change. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Bernard. Bernard was 71 years old, sharp, independent, and meticulous about his health. He owned a home blood pressure monitor and used it religiously. Every single morning, he'd sit down, wrap the cuff around his arm, and wait for those numbers to appear. And every single morning, he'd look at the bottom number first. Why? Because decades ago, someone told him that was the one that mattered. The resting pressure, the baseline. If that number stayed controlled, he believed he was safe. For years, Bernard's bottom number cooperated. It hovered in a comfortable range, never alarming, never concerning. He felt reassured. But here's what Bernard didn't notice. His top number had been drifting upward, slowly, gradually, so incrementally that it never triggered alarm bells. 142 became 148, then 153, then 158. Each time he mentioned it during checkups, he heard some variation of, well, arteries stiffen as we get older. That's expected. Bernard accepted this. After all, his bottom number remained perfect. Then one evening, while reading in his favorite chair, Bernard experienced what he later described as an explosion inside his skull. By the time paramedics arrived, half his body had stopped responding. Bernard survived his hemorrhagic stroke, but he lost the independence he'd spent a lifetime building. He now requires assistance for basic tasks he once performed without thinking. The tragedy? His medical records showed years of climbing systolic readings. The warning was there. It just wasn't recognized for what it was. Bernard's story isn't rare. It happens constantly, in living rooms, kitchens, doctors' offices, wherever blood pressure is checked and misunderstood. The question is, why? Why do so many people focus on the wrong number? Why do warning signs get dismissed? And what exactly makes one of those values so much more dangerous than the other? To answer this, we need to understand what those numbers actually measure and how aging transforms their meaning completely. Blood pressure measurement captures two distinct moments in your heart's endless cycle. The first number, the one on top, records what happens during cardiac contraction. Your heart squeezes, ejecting blood into your arterial system with significant force. This moment of maximum pressure is called systolic pressure. The second number, displayed below, measures what happens between heartbeats. Your heart relaxes, chambers refill, and arteries experience their lowest pressure point. This is diastolic pressure, sometimes called resting pressure. For decades, medical thinking treated both numbers with equal concern. If either climbed too high, intervention was warranted. This made sense because, in younger adults, elevated diastolic pressure strongly correlated with cardiovascular problems. But here's where everything shifts. As the human body ages, arterial walls undergo a fundamental transformation. They lose elasticity. Collagen replaces flexible tissue. What were once supple, responsive tubes gradually become rigid channels. This isn't disease, it's biology. It happens to virtually everyone to some degree, but it changes everything about blood pressure dynamics. Think of young, healthy arteries like flexible rubber hoses. When the heart pumps, they expand to accommodate the surge, then gently recoil. Pressure stays relatively controlled. Now imagine those same arteries decades later, stiffer, less yielding. When the heart pumps with the same force, rigid arteries can't expand to absorb it. Pressure spikes higher. Meanwhile, between heartbeats, those stiff arteries don't maintain tension the way they once did. Diastolic pressure may stay flat or even decline. This creates a specific pattern: rising systolic pressure with stable or falling diastolic pressure. And this is precisely where the danger hides. Now, if aging arteries cause that top number to climb naturally, why would that be dangerous? Isn't it just normal aging? This is the critical question, and the answer explains why so many people receive false reassurance while real damage accumulates. Stay with me, because what comes next changes how you'll view every blood pressure reading from now on. Large-scale cardiovascular research spanning decades has revealed something crucial, something that contradicts what many people have been told. In adults over 50, elevated systolic pressure, that top number, predicts stroke, heart attack, heart failure, and cardiovascular death more powerfully than diastolic pressure. Read that again if you need to. The top number carries greater predictive weight, not the bottom one that so many people watch, not the resting pressure they've been reassured about. The systolic value, the force generated with each heartbeat, becomes the primary threat as arteries age. Why? Because that elevated force doesn't just push blood through your system. It hammers against delicate tissues with every single contraction, 60 to 90 times per minute, 100,000 times per day, year after year. Consider where that force travels. It surges into the brain, where tiny vessels supply irreplaceable neural tissue. Every pressure spike stresses those vessels. Every spike increases stroke probability incrementally. It floods into kidneys, where microscopic structures filter blood with precision. Excessive force damages these delicate filters progressively, silently reducing kidney function. It pounds against the heart itself, the very organ generating the pressure. The heart works harder against stiff arteries, eventually thickening and weakening under the strain. It reaches the eyes, where fragile vessels supply the retina. Elevated systolic pressure quietly degrades vision over time. None of this announces itself. There's no pain, no obvious symptom. Blood pressure earned its reputation as the silent killer, precisely because damage accumulates without any alarm bells. And here's the devastating irony. Someone whose bottom number looks perfectly normal, who might feel completely reassured by that reading, can harbor profoundly elevated systolic pressure that's actively causing organ damage with every heartbeat. They watch the wrong number. They hear reassuring words, and they have no idea what's actually happening inside. This pattern has a clinical name: isolated systolic hypertension. It means the top number is elevated while the bottom number remains normal or even low. It's extraordinarily common in older adults. Some estimates suggest it affects the majority of people over 60 with high blood pressure. And yet, it's frequently dismissed. Your bottom number is fine. That top number just rises with age. Nothing to worry about at your stage of life. These phrases get repeated constantly. They provide comfort, but they may also provide a dangerous false sense of security. Research has repeatedly demonstrated that isolated systolic hypertension significantly increases risk for stroke, both ischemic and hemorrhagic. It increases risk for heart failure, as the heart strains against rigid arteries. It elevates risk for coronary artery disease, damaging the vessels feeding the heart muscle. It accelerates cognitive decline, reducing blood flow to brain tissue. It promotes kidney disease, destroying delicate filtration structures. And it contributes to vision loss, degrading retinal blood supply. This isn't theoretical. These outcomes are documented across numerous studies involving hundreds of thousands of participants. Yet the pattern often goes undertreated or completely ignored because attention focuses on the wrong number. Now, before anyone concludes that diastolic pressure doesn't matter at all, that would overcorrect in the wrong direction. The bottom number absolutely plays a role, but its significance shifts with context. In younger adults, elevated diastolic pressure often reflects cardiovascular risk because their arteries are still flexible. High diastolic readings suggest genuine systemic problems. But here's where things get nuanced and where many people experience confusion. In older adults, particularly those on blood pressure treatment, diastolic pressure that drops too low creates its own set of dangers. Your heart muscle receives its blood supply primarily during diastole, that resting phase between beats. Coronary arteries fill when the heart relaxes. If diastolic pressure falls too far, coronary blood flow may become inadequate. The very organ being protected starts to starve. Research suggests that diastolic pressure dropping below approximately 60% may actually worsen cardiovascular outcomes in some individuals. Falls, fatigue, dizziness, mental fog, these can signal diastolic pressure has been pushed too low, often as a side effect of aggressive systolic reduction. This creates a genuine tightrope. Systolic pressure too high, organs get damaged by excessive force. Diastolic pressure too low, the heart muscle may not receive adequate blood supply. Finding the balance between these extremes, protecting against systolic danger without collapsing diastolic support, becomes the real challenge. This brings us to something rarely mentioned outside specialized cardiology settings, yet immensely valuable for anyone wanting to understand their cardiovascular status: pulse pressure. It's simply the mathematical gap between your two readings. Take your systolic number, subtract your diastolic number, and you have your pulse pressure. Why does this matter? Because pulse pressure reveals arterial stiffness, the underlying driver of systolic elevation, better than either number alone. Let me give you an example. Person A has a blood pressure reading of 158/72. The top number is clearly elevated. The bottom looks acceptable. Person B has a reading of 142/88. Both numbers are above ideal ranges. Which reading is worse? Most people would say person B. After all, both numbers are elevated. But calculate the pulse pressure. Person A, 158 minus 72 equals 86. Person B, 142 minus 88 equals 54. Person A has a significantly wider pulse pressure, indicating greater arterial stiffness and potentially higher cardiovascular risk, despite the bottom number looking better. This is why understanding the relationship between numbers matters as much as the numbers themselves. A widening gap signals arteries losing elasticity. It predicts stroke, heart failure, and cognitive decline independently. Yet most people have never been taught to look at it. So if elevated systolic pressure and widened pulse pressure pose the real threats, especially as we age, why do so many people receive reassurance instead of intervention? Why are rising top numbers so often dismissed as normal aging when research clearly shows they predict catastrophic outcomes? And more importantly, what actually influences systolic pressure? What works to reduce it, and what surprisingly makes things worse? Here's something that frustrates many people. They try standard approaches: reduce salt, take medication, exercise, and watch their bottom number respond beautifully while their top number barely budges. This happens because systolic pressure and diastolic pressure respond to different mechanisms. Treating them identically often fails. Sometimes it even creates new problems. Certain lifestyle changes specifically target arterial flexibility, the root cause of systolic elevation. Others have minimal effect, or in some cases, backfire. Certain medications lower systolic pressure effectively while preserving adequate diastolic pressure. Others drop both numbers, sometimes pushing diastolic dangerously low while providing false confidence about systolic control. Understanding which strategies actually work and which create hidden problems, becomes essential. This is also why blood pressure management in older adults demands individualization. Cookie-cutter targets don't account for the complex interplay between systolic danger and diastolic necessity. Treating numbers without treating the person often produces unintended consequences. Someone might achieve better numbers on paper while experiencing dizziness, fatigue, and increased fall risk. That's not success. That's imbalance masquerading as improvement. In Part 2, we're going deep into solutions. You'll learn why systolic pressure keeps rising even when you feel perfectly healthy, and what that reveals about arterial changes. You'll discover which specific lifestyle modifications actually improve artery flexibility based on research evidence. You'll understand how certain common habits inadvertently raise systolic pressure, including some that seem healthy. You'll gain clarity about medications, which approaches work best for systolic control, and which ones create hidden problems. You'll learn how to monitor blood pressure correctly, because the way most people measure creates misleading data. You'll understand the morning danger that most people completely miss, and why it matters more than afternoon readings. And you'll know how to interpret your own readings moving forward, transforming confusion into clarity. This isn't about chasing perfect numbers. It's about understanding your cardiovascular reality and making informed decisions that actually protect you. Let's consolidate what we've covered. Blood pressure presents two numbers, but they don't carry equal weight throughout life. As arteries age and stiffen, systolic pressure, the top number, rises and becomes the dominant predictor of cardiovascular events in older adults. Diastolic pressure, the bottom number, may stabilize or even decline. Watching it exclusively creates false reassurance while systolic danger builds. Isolated systolic hypertension, elevated top number with normal bottom number, is extremely common and extremely dangerous when ignored. Yet it's frequently dismissed as normal aging. The gap between numbers, pulse pressure, reveals arterial stiffness and predicts outcomes independently. Widening pulse pressure signals progressing cardiovascular stress. Diastolic pressure still matters, particularly in treatment contexts. Pushing it too low compromises coronary blood flow and creates symptoms that shouldn't be dismissed. The balance between controlling systolic danger and preserving diastolic adequacy defines effective blood pressure management for older adults. And most importantly, the number most people have been watching may not be the number that actually determines their fate. Now, I want to hear from you. After everything we've covered, think about your own blood pressure readings, past or recent. Which number has been higher, the top one or the bottom one? And which number have you been paying more attention to? Drop your answer in the comments below. Your response might help someone else recognize a pattern they've been missing. And if this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't considered before, if you now see those two numbers differently, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Part 2 is coming, and it delivers the practical strategies you need. Share this with someone who checks their blood pressure regularly. They deserve to know which number actually matters before they learn the hard way. Blood pressure doesn't announce its damage. It works quietly, gradually, relentlessly, until something breaks. But understanding which number carries the real weight puts you ahead of most people. It transforms those readings from random data into meaningful information. Knowledge doesn't create fear. It creates power. Stay tuned for Part 2 of this series, where we turn understanding into action. Until then, keep watching those numbers, especially the one that truly matters. This is Wellness Secrets. Stay informed. Stay protected. When your blood sugar levels are elevated beyond where they should be, your body initiates a process to try to correct the imbalance. And this process has direct consequences for how hydrated you feel when you wake up. Here's how it works. Under normal circumstances, the glucose in your blood gets transported into your cells where it is used for energy. Insulin, a hormone produced by your pancreas, acts like a key that unlocks your cells and allows glucose to enter. When this system is working properly, your blood sugar stays within a healthy range, and everything functions smoothly. But when your body either does not produce enough insulin, or when your cells become resistant to insulin's effects, glucose starts to accumulate in your bloodstream. Your blood sugar rises higher than it should, and your body recognizes this as a problem that needs to be addressed. The solution your body comes up with is to flush the excess glucose out through your kidneys. Your kidneys begin filtering more glucose out of your blood and excreting it through urine. But glucose is what scientists call osmotically active, which means it pulls water along with it. So when your kidneys excrete excess glucose, they also excrete a significant amount of water. This is why frequent urination is one of the classic signs of elevated blood sugar. Your body is literally trying to wash the excess glucose out of your system. But in doing so, it is also depleting your fluid reserves. The result is a state of progressive dehydration that many people do not even recognize. You are losing more water than usual through urination, often without increasing your fluid intake to compensate. And one of the earliest and most noticeable signs of this dehydration is waking up with a dry mouth. What makes this particularly concerning is that blood sugar problems develop gradually. They do not appear overnight. The progression from normal blood sugar to prediabetes to full diabetes typically happens over years or even decades. And during this slow progression, most people have no obvious symptoms. They feel relatively normal. They have no idea that their metabolic health is quietly deteriorating. But the dry mouth might be there. It might be showing up every morning, trying to get your attention while you dismiss it as nothing important. Think about whether any of these experiences sound familiar to you. You find yourself getting up to use the bathroom multiple times during the night, more than you used to. You feel thirsty frequently throughout the day. Even when you've been drinking water, you notice that minor cuts, scrapes, or wounds seem to take longer to heal than they did in the past. Your vision occasionally seems blurry for no apparent reason, then clears up again. You feel more fatigued than you think you should, even when you are getting adequate sleep. You experience tingling sensations or numbness in your hands or feet. You have noticed unexplained weight changes, either loss or gain. Any one of these symptoms in isolation might not mean anything significant, but when several of them appear together, and when they are accompanied by persistent morning dry mouth, they form a pattern that should not be ignored. The window of opportunity here is critically important to understand. When blood sugar problems are caught early, in the pre-diabetic stage or in early diabetes, there is often a tremendous amount that can be done to reverse or significantly slow the progression. Dietary changes, increased physical activity, weight management, stress reduction, and improved sleep can all have a profound impact on metabolic health. In some cases, people are able to bring their blood sugar completely back into the normal range through lifestyle modifications alone. But when blood sugar problems go undetected for years, the consequences become more severe and more difficult to reverse. Chronically elevated blood sugar damages blood vessels throughout your body. It damages nerves. It damages your kidneys. It damages your eyes. It increases your risk of heart disease and stroke. It impairs wound, healing, and immune function. It can lead to complications that significantly reduce quality of life and lifespan. The difference between catching this early and catching it late can be enormous. And that simple morning dry mouth might be your body's way of giving you an early warning. If you have not had your blood sugar checked recently, please consider doing so. A simple fasting glucose test, or hemoglobin. A 1C test can give you valuable information about where your metabolic health stands. These tests are inexpensive, widely available, and could provide you with information that changes everything. This is especially important if you are over the age of 40. If you carry excess weight, particularly around your midsection, if you have a family history of diabetes, or if you have any of the symptoms I just described. Do not wait for the symptoms to become obvious. By the time diabetes becomes obvious, significant damage may have already occurred. The dry mouth is your early signal. Pay attention to it. Now, the next cause of morning dry mouth is one that affects an enormous number of people. And yet it rarely gets the attention it deserves in these conversations. The medications you take might be directly responsible for your dry mouth. This is something that catches many people by surprise. They have been taking a medication for months or years. They have noticed that their mouth seems drier than it used to be. But they never connected the two because no one ever told them that dry mouth could be a side effect. The reality is that hundreds of commonly prescribed medications can reduce saliva production. And when I say hundreds, I am not exaggerating. The list is extensive and includes medications that millions of people take every single day. Let me walk you through some of the most common categories. Antihistamines are among the most frequent culprits. These are the medications people take for allergies, for cold symptoms, and for sleep. They work by blocking histamine receptors, but in doing so, they also affect the receptors in your salivary glands that stimulate saliva production. If you take antihistamines regularly, especially the older first-generation types, dry mouth is an extremely common side effect. Antidepressants, particularly those in the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor category and the tricyclic category, are well known for causing dry mouth. These medications affect neurotransmitter systems in your brain, but those same neurotransmitters also play a role in salivary gland function. Many people who start taking antidepressants notice a significant change in how their mouth feels, especially in the morning. Blood pressure medications frequently cause dry mouth as well. Diuretics, which work by increasing urine output to reduce fluid volume in your body, can leave you dehydrated and dry. Other blood pressure medications, like ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, and calcium channel blockers, can also affect saliva production through various mechanisms. Pain medications, including both over-the-counter and prescription options, are another common cause. Opioid medications are particularly notorious for reducing saliva production, but even non-opioid pain relievers can contribute to dry mouth in some people. Medications for anxiety, muscle relaxants, medications for urinary incontinence, medications for Parkinson's disease, medications for nausea, and many others all have dry mouth listed among their potential side effects. And here is what makes this particularly challenging. Many people take multiple medications. The average adult over the age of 65 takes 4 or more prescription medications. Each of those medications might have some effect on saliva production, and when you combine them, the effects can compound. Someone who takes a blood pressure medication, an antihistamine for allergies, and a medication for sleep might be experiencing dry mouth from 3 different sources simultaneously. And they might have no idea that their medications are the cause, because each individual medication's effect seems minor. I want to be very clear about something here. I am absolutely not telling you to stop taking your medications. That would be irresponsible and potentially dangerous. Many of these medications are essential for managing serious health conditions. Stopping them without medical supervision could have severe consequences. What I am telling you is that you need to be an informed and active participant in your own healthcare. If you are experiencing dry mouth, make a complete list of every medication you take. Include prescription medications, over-the-counter medications, and supplements. Bring this list to your doctor or pharmacist and have a specific conversation about dry mouth as a side effect. Ask whether any of your medications are known to cause dry mouth. Ask whether there are alternative medications that might be less likely to cause this side effect. Ask whether adjusting the timing of your medications might help. Ask whether there are strategies to manage the dry mouth while continuing your necessary treatments. Sometimes the solution is surprisingly simple. Switching from one blood pressure medication to another in the same class might eliminate the dry mouth entirely without compromising the effectiveness of your treatment. Taking a medication at a different time of day might reduce its impact on your sleep and your morning symptoms. Adding a medication specifically designed to stimulate saliva production might be appropriate in some cases. The point is that you have options, but you will never discover those options if you do not have the conversation. If this information about medications resonates with you, I would appreciate it if you took a moment to hit the like button on this video. It helps more people find this content, and it tells me that this kind of detailed health information is valuable to you. And if you have not subscribed to Wellness Secrets yet, now is a great time to do that. We consistently create content designed to help you understand your body and make better decisions about your health. Now, we have covered 2 major causes of dry mouth so far, but there are several more that you need to know about. And the next one is something that almost everyone thinks they understand, but almost everyone gets wrong.